and welcome to the first of our Unlocking Archaeology video series lectures for 2022. I'm Mariette, I'm the current chair of the Southern African Archaeological Student Council. With me today is my fellow council members, Sebastian and Tatenda, and we are joined by our special guest today, Prof Manyanga. But without stealing any of Tatenda's thunder, he is our host for today. I'm going to hand over to Tatenda to do a full introduction for us. Over to you, Tatenda.
Thank you, Mariette. Thank you, Prof Manyanga, for having us today. So I'm going to introduce you to the students. And yeah, Prof Manyanga holds a licentiate and Ph.D. from Uppsala University. He has over 25 years of experience in heritage training and research, where he worked with various universities as well as researchers in Africa and Europe. Prof Manyanga has several specialties, which include heritage impact assessments and specialist heritage tours, in which he is currently developing a e.g.Zimbabwe, an application which is going to be providing tours online. So we are talking of different tours of different monuments in Zimbabwe, and I'm sure very soon it will be available on Play Store and Google and Apple Store. As an active researcher, Prof Manyanga has authored several books that speaks a lot about Africa's past environments. And these books include Choices and Constraints, Animal Resource Exploitation in Southeastern Zimbabwe, AD 900 to 1500, Resilient Landscapes, Socio-environmental Dynamics in Shashi-Limpopo Basin, Southern Zimbabwe, AD 800 to present. He has also featured in various documentaries such as A Home in the Drylands, Part 1 and 2, which is available on YouTube. So currently, Professor Manyanga is a full-time professor at Great Zimbabwe University. And one of the most interesting things about Professor Manyanga is in 2021, he was the national focal person of Zimbabwe climate change mitigation and heritage management. So all this actually leads us to his today's topic, which is known as the past in the present, situating archaeological resources in development agenda. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you very much, Tatenda, for the kind words. And I'm really grateful to the Council for inviting me to share my thoughts in terms of the direction that I think our discipline needs to take to increase its relevance and also to bring excitement to, especially to students and practitioners. Going to my topic, I thought that I will talk about the past and the present, talking about the archaeology now and going forward. And so I situate myself within Southern African archaeology. And having been trained in archaeology and having practiced archaeology in Southern Africa, I've always been left with so many questions in terms of what my discipline could do in terms of development that we also desire, and how my discipline can also be considered to be very relevant, especially on matters which change the quality of life of ordinary people. So in terms of my talk, this is how I've structured it. I'll reflect on Southern African archaeological resources, and then I'll look at global development frameworks, the Sustainable Development Goals, Agenda 2063, the Africa We Want, national development programs, and then look at archaeology in development, what archaeology could do or has done, looking at issues of mindset change, innovation, tourism, development facilitation, and social development. And then finally, I will reflect on the future, especially looking at southwestern Zimbabwe, where I've spent a great deal of time researching, and also in the adjoining regions in Botswana and South Africa. So if one is to look at Southern Africa, I think the council and members listening would agree with me that indeed Southern Africa has a rich archaeological heritage. If one is to look at the rich archaeological past with the long record of human occupation, one can look at the paleontological record, the prolonged Stone Age industries, the impressive rock art traditions, which one could call images of imagination and innovation, the material remains of diverse farming communities to the recent past, the dry stone walling that we find throughout Southern Africa, and ancient mine workings, smelting and smithing. One can look at pre-colonial trading centers and forts. One can still look at urban heritage and archaeology and liberation archaeology. And all this and other aspects really make up what we can call Southern Africa's rich archaeological heritage. So there's no doubt about the wealth we have in terms of our archaeology. But one can still also say, well, this is the same we can say in terms of our mineral resources, our human resources, and many other resources that we can think of in terms of Southern Africa. So the wealth is there. The wealth is indeed there. So just a quick run, looking at human ancestry, paleontological and archaeological research. You can reflect on the cradle of humankind. You can focus on Broken Hill and Kabwe, and many such sites that tell us about our deep past. You can look at the rock art, which provides useful insights into hunter-gatherer livelihoods, environments, and belief systems. And these rock art sites are found throughout the region, a really rich heritage, which we all enjoy studying and staring at. You can relate that to the ethnography, through which it provides meaning of the hunter-gatherers' art and other issues of livelihoods in Southern Africa. Again, a huge privilege to have access to the rich ethnography. And then, of course, the material analysis, which provides information on technology and trade. One can look also at metallurgy and the processing, which again are great innovations that we can reflect from the past. And of course, you can talk about human remains and how these contribute to such things as paleopathology, demography, diet, belief systems, among many other aspects. And look at issues of globalization. We have got that window through the trade goods when we look at both local, regional, and international trade, where again, we see the exchange of resources and also issues of knowledge transfer through the global trade networks. And you may like architecture, really stunning signs that we have in Southern Africa, especially when we look at our dry stone walling. And we can go even further on issues of livelihoods when we see the creativity to do with such aspects as food storage, the grain bins, and which played a very important part in understanding pre-colonial food systems and issues of subsistence. And all these, one can look at them as major innovations, especially issues of food system and agro-innovations, which we see in the past, the domestication of plants and animals, when we do reflect to the different narratives we have for Southern Africa. And all this is a reflection of the rich archaeological heritage we have in Southern Africa. And of course, we continue to talk about the paintings of domesticates. And all this, again, is the rich heritage that we do have, which comes in different forms. When one is to look at it and to think about archaeology and archaeologists, you are passionate people, very passionate, very determined, very resilient. You can add all the superlatives you may want to give. They love, archaeologists love their discipline. Archaeologists enjoy their discipline. And within the same context, we deal with this archaeology and within the context of communities. And one of the key questions that communities ask after they've done our research, our brilliant research that is coming from Southern Africa, they always ask the question, so what happens to us when you're done with your research? That question has been bothering me for a while because I've failed to find adequate answers in most cases. And this brings the question whether archaeology has really transformed itself such that it can contribute in improving the quality of life of ordinary people. Within the same wealth that we have in terms of our archaeological resources and other resources, we still find a huge population of our communities in Southern Africa who are in extreme conditions of poverty. And it sort of reminded me of some of the great musicians and songs that we do have. And whether we are dealing with a situation of beggars on a beach of gold, or diamonds, or people with diamonds on the soles of their feet. And the world is there, but we still see so much poverty. Hence, I decided to talk about archaeological resources and issues of development. But as we look at this, I would like again to reflect again on our discipline, which in many ways seems to be a discipline under siege. Talking of Zimbabwe at one point, there was talk of government having to scrap some useless degrees. And on that list, somebody was really notorious and included archaeology. And that again is an issue that we need to reflect on. And recently we have been talking about the situation even outside Southern Africa, outside Africa, especially in the United Kingdom, with the situation at the University of Sheffield. And again, one of the headlines in the newspapers emphasized on the fact that archaeology was facing a perfect storm of shortages and closures, and that every expert was really decrying the nationwide attack on the discipline. And so when such things are featuring, it needs us as practitioners to start thinking, what do we have to do? What does our discipline have to do for it to become more relevant, so that our discipline is not under siege, so that people do not question the relevance and value of what we do. And lucky enough, when one reflects on the global developmental agenda, and one look at, for example, the United Nations, you'll see that they actually have put heritage, including archaeology, to be one of the key drivers to drive development throughout the world. And 2021 was declared the year of the creative cultures for sustainable development. So they were talking about culture for development. They were also talking about voices for culture. So in terms of the will, we do have at the highest level of international organization an interest and a recognition that indeed heritage and including archaeology can be a driver for socio-economic development. And then with the African Union's development, Agenda 2063, one is to look at aspirations 5 and aspiration 6. You see again, it recognizes the importance of heritage, of culture, and of archaeology by extension. And again, if you look at the year 2021, it was declared the year of the arts, culture, and heritage as levers for building the Africa we want. So again, at continental level, the willpower is there. Then if you look at national development agenda, I know in Botswana, for example, have been grappling with the issue of incorporating heritage into their developmental agenda. The same applies to South Africa. They've been trying to incorporate heritage into the developmental agenda. And I will reflect on Zimbabwe, where I'm much more familiar with the ongoing developmental agenda. And then out of this, I think we can also reflect on other countries as well to try to stimulate development. In Zimbabwe, the main blueprint for development is Vision 2030, which reflects the collective aspirations and determination of the people of Zimbabwe towards a prosperous and empowered upper middle income society by 2030. So you can see that this is very futuristic, but what is interesting is that what underpins that national policy is that it is driven by heritage. It is heritage-based and it is knowledge-driven program of development. The desire is to see the economy and the other social aspects develop, anchored in the heritage and also driven by the knowledge that derives from our human capital. And also this development is also supposed to be driven by innovations, which are supposed to be coming from the identified strategic institutions, like institutions of higher learning, our universities. So in terms of planning, you can look at both the global, regional, and even national policies, which again recognizes issues of heritage, including archaeology. So one then wonders why at one point we feel that the discipline is under siege. Why is that so? And what can be done by archaeologists such that the discipline meaningfully contributes to national development? Again, reflecting on the Vision 2030, looking at Zimbabwe, one could look at how both cultural and archaeological resources were to contribute to the national development program. And on the other end, there was the issue of natural resources. So in terms of our cultural and archaeological resources, these have always been recognized as being central in sort of stimulating the economy after many years of difficulties. And starting with the transitional stabilization program, archaeological resources were seen as being central, especially in the tourism industry, where archaeological sites like Great Zimbabwe, Kami, the Matobo cultural landscape were all seen as low-hanging fruit, which could drive development. And indeed, we haven't had opportunity to review how much the tourism sector actually contributed in stabilizing the economy, and how so far tourism, which derives from cultural and archaeological resources, has also stimulated the growth as is outlined in the national development strategies that are in place. But there is that recognition that resources, archaeological resources and other heritage resources could play a part. Now, the fact that heritage resources have to contribute to development comes from the realization that heritage is not something that should just be enjoyed and probably help us define who we are, to give us an identity, or for us to have an emotional attachment, but on the realization that they also exist to meet the necessities and purposes of human life. And if that is to be achieved, therefore, we don't have just to research and understand the archaeological sites. We don't just have to value that. We don't have to look after the sites and conserve them. We don't have just to enjoy them for its own sake, but also to use them sustainably. We have to use them sustainably if we are to realize the fact that these resources or these cultural resources are also resources that can contribute to development. But the way I look at archaeology is that it does provide inspiration for innovation and development. And if one look at what we deal with as archaeologists, you'll see that what we are looking at, whether we're looking at Stone Age industries, we're looking at metallurgy, we're looking at the food production and the domestication of plants and animals, all those are innovations. All those are reflecting creativity and adaptation. All those are reflecting on matters of resilience by past societies. And we also can learn through archaeology that development can be done by a knowledgeable people, as was the case of the people who produced the material culture that we're dealing with as archaeologists. They were knowledgeable communities who extracted and produced for the needs of society out of their local environment. They developed from what they had. They were not people who were expecting that development would come from elsewhere, but that it will be anchored in the resources, in the expertise, and the knowledge that they had as communities. So past civilizations, if you are to look at them, whether you're looking at Mapungubwe, you're looking at Great Zimbabwe, you're looking at Totswe, Mokhala, all these were anchored on communities' adaptations on the local realities. So what I think can happen is that we can develop innovations from past experiences, and these actually provide us with comparative examples on how it can be done. And this can be actually be done and in a very modernized way, but the key idea is that we can learn through archaeology. We should not only learn about archaeology, but we should learn through it. And one of the major challenges, especially in Africa, is the issue of colonialism and the hangover from it that has resulted in loss of meaning in many issues. Loss of meaning, especially in the vast majority of Africa's population, lack of self-belief that they can actually do it, the issue of self-hate and self-pity. So indeed, for development to take place, there is need for a change in the mindset. And I see archaeology providing that kind of inspiration. archaeological heritage resources are so important in giving confidence that if we have past communities who developed Mapungubwe, Kami, Tozo Mokhala, who did the beautiful art, who achieved the sort of civilizations like Great Zimbabwe, then indeed there is no need for us to have self-doubt that it can still be done. And it is out of this that I think archaeology does provide the inspiration that is needed for development, especially if we can restore issues of self-belief, and if we can restore confidence in African communities that it can actually be done. Because I believe that there is no way that as a continent or as a nation we can develop when we are full of self-pity and the assumption that somebody is going to come from elsewhere to rescue us. And we've seen that if you look at past civilizations, these were all anchored on local resource utilization and the production and local production and local consumption. Yes, we can talk about the issue of long distance trade. Yes, it only enhanced, it was a catalyst development, but the fundamentals were the local branches of the economy. Then, of course, one can look at the issue of tourism in terms of us as archaeologists identifying the resources, researching the resource, interpreting the archaeological resource and conserving them such that they are usable in the tourism industry, which is one of the major drivers for economic growth throughout the world. If you look at cultural tourism, you look at some of our major archaeological sites, these are also major tourist centers. And they are attracting not only tourists, but they're also attracting investment and providing leisure, recreation, and also education. So this again is an opportunity that as archaeologists, we need again to participate in ensuring that our archaeological resources are ready to be utilized in a sustainable way in the tourism industries. One advantage that we have with archaeological resources is that they do have such a high strategic value. And also these resources are there. What we just need to do is to develop them such that we don't cause negative impact on our archaeological resources. But this is something that has been bequeathed to us. We have our Mapungubwe, we do have our 12-4 Fontaine, we do have our Kami, we do have our Manyikeni, we do have our Mozambique Island, we do have all these sites in Southern Africa, and they are there. So they have a high strategic value, and it looks easy to implement because these can be viewed as low-hanging fruits. And of course, we do have to do our bit in terms of conservation and research to ensure that these resources are indeed usable in a sustainable way. But let me not present a glossy picture in terms of how archaeological resources will contribute to such things as tourism. At times, some activities that are at the heart of our profession, the sort of engagements that we do have, the debates that we do have, some of which get very intense, at times confuse some of our strategic partners in utilizing archaeological resources for development, because they may not have an appreciation on the nature of the discipline itself in terms of the disputations that we do have in terms of our interpretation. And here, I'm giving here the example of Great Zimbabwe, and the issues to do with reclaiming a confiscated past, where you have various interpretations, and which, in my opinion, at times appears to be almost like wrestling and almost like rambling in the enclosures. But these activities are of value to our discipline, but normally when other strategic partners for development listen to us, they tend to sort of get lost in terms of what actually archaeology can do. But it's all part of improving on the interpretation and also improving in telling the narratives of our valuable archaeological resources. Well, yes, these archaeological resources, we've seen them, how they've inspired such in such areas as the showbiz and movies and gaming, cuisine and architecture. And some of the great movies we have seen have been inspired by the past, and these are very critical, and in which, again, archaeologists have a role to play in terms of how our archaeological knowledge can be utilized in coming up with blockbuster movies and in contributing to one of those major industries which contribute meaningfully to national economies. Of course, architecture, for those who have been in the kingdom, in Victoria Falls, for those who have seen the lodges at the ancient city, Great Zimbabwe, all inspired by the architecture at Great Zimbabwe. But also when one looks at issues of subsistence that we study and issues of livelihoods that we study and extract from the work of our isotopes, of our faunal analysis, from our floral analysis, all these can contribute towards developing exciting and appetizing cuisine that again can drive our economies. But again, this is where I see archaeology also playing a role. And of course, continues to play an important role in social development, especially in building cohesion, especially social cohesion, having a sense of national identity and pride. And most importantly, archaeological resources should play a very important role in regional integration. We should not be having issues of xenophobia, for example, if, for example, our communities understood the nature of our past, which we learn through archaeology, and the nature of how we share a common past. We shouldn't be having such undesirable events in our history. So again, archaeologists need to play a part in terms of social development. It's only when we become a peaceful, coexisting regional bloc that we are then able to develop as a region, as a continent, and as a global community. Of course, if one is to look at our archaeological resources, they do resonate on a global level without prejudice in most cases. Look at the exceptional rock art we have. Look at the exceptional stone walling that we do have. These are achievements of outstanding value, which are valued at a global level. And those are the platforms that give an opportunity for African countries to engage and re-engage, and also in image building, which is so important on aspects of cultural diplomacy. We belong to a global community, and we need a good standing in that community. And our archaeological resources are the sort of platforms that we can use for acceptance, for integration, and they are very important avenues in, again, developing us as a community, as a continent, and as we engage with other members of the global community. Of course, archaeologists play such an important role, especially in development facilitation, when you conduct the pre-development impact studies. And that is something that is mandatory in most countries, as the archaeological resources are also protected. So archaeologists have got a very important role to play in development facilitation. They also play an important role in the ease of doing business, especially in reducing the cost of doing business, where if impact assessments are done procedurally and properly, then the role of archaeologists is very central in that. And also their role in conducting pre-development impact studies is to ensure sustainable environmental protection and resilience. So again, you find that our profession continues to be involved in development issues. Most aspirations for our African countries is to see major infrastructure, to have food security, to improve on matters of health, to improve on infrastructure, and all these need these pre-development impact assessments. So yes, I think archaeologists definitely have a big role to play in development facilitation, the ease of doing business, and in sustainable development. And on top of that, when impact assessments are done, they normally result in the identification of sites and resources and new archaeological resources. And these add value to whatever projects would have been proposed. So it is a way of adding more resources and more value to projects. And these can see other spin-offs, which can also trigger development, both social and economic development within communities. It's interesting that in one of the examples that I was involved in a few years back, whereby a major company had decided to invest in mining, the mining of coal in the Limpopo Valley, and for some, for heritage reasons, the development of that company and their development plans got entangled on issues of heritage, where there was so much divided opinion how the mining of coal would impact on the Mapungubwe cultural landscape. And you can see on the graphs how the debates and the disagreements over heritage, how it affected also the stock of that particular company. One could see the general decline over the years, with a bit of a rise in 2012, when there was a bit of hope that the issue of heritage and the development were about to be resolved. But you can see the trends that issues of archaeological resources have an impact on our stock markets. And therefore, it is important that archaeologists fully get engaged on issues of stocks and futures in terms of economic development. And of course, archaeological resources indeed attract investment and capital injection, whereby if you look at some of our major archaeological sites, those are centers which attract funding, which attract people, and which also attract other developments, either to provide visitor convenience, especially tourist facilities, and other services. So these are centers for investment. And again, this talks on issues of economic development. I'll give the example of Great Zimbabwe World Heritage Site, where the developments around the site itself over the years have resulted in other related industries, which also bring some economic benefits and social benefits to the community in terms of developments, in terms of improving the quality of life within the communities, and in terms of giving opportunities also local communities. And finally, when I reflect on these issues, I want to turn back to a region which I've spent so much time researching, that is the southwestern Zimbabwe and the adjacent areas in Botswana and South Africa, where again, the amount of archaeological resources, the wealth of archaeological resources is of the highest level, and where there could be opportunities that archaeological resources can actually drive development in that particular region. That particular region, I have really been working there for a number of years now with a number of colleagues, and the wealth of archaeological resources in the Shashi-Limpopo Basin is indeed amazing. But when one looks at that region, one is reminded again about the discussions that we have today on issues of climate change, and how a region which supported huge populations, a region which supported civilizations, now in a very precarious kind of situation when it comes to the environmental conditions. A region which is affected by frequent droughts, a region which is also susceptible to flooding and many other problems. But they have such a rich wealth of archaeological resources. Here I'm making reference to the site of Mapela, which is strategically located on the edge of the Thule Circle. And that area is associated with other developments in the region to do with the development of trans-frontier conservation areas, and also the development of a border post, which is supposed to link Zimbabwe, Botswana, and South Africa, and the rest of the region. So there is, again, a great opportunity that the development, the conservation, further research at places such as Mapela and the related sites in that particular region of Southern Africa can actually be the anchor for developments in the Shashi-Limpopo Basin. So again, I'm looking at really the sort of prospects that could be there in terms of bringing economic development in the region. And as a final reflection, in terms of how I think archaeological resources could contribute to economic development, social development, we have, as archaeologists, have to think beyond community engagement. My view of it now is that I think we have really exhausted on this particular issue, and there is consensus that issues of community engagement are an ethical issue. It should be part and parcel of what we do as archaeologists. Whatever we do, we have to have the community engagement as an integral aspect of that. But what should happen in terms of bringing issues of development and beneficiation to communities? We have, as archaeologists and related professionals, we have to engage with other developments, who are also involved in developmental issues. I think that engaging with other disciplines is actually an imperative if archaeological resources are to drive development, if archaeological resources are to play an important role in uplifting the quality of life of ordinary people. And since I'm communicating with the Student Council, I think there is the opportunity for young scholars and young researchers also to find opportunities and to play also a role in ensure that archaeological resources play an important role in the development of our communities, in the development of our region, in the development of our community, of our continent, and in the development of the global community. I think we have to go beyond community engagement by engaging other disciplines who are also involved in development. And that way, I think the issue of a discipline under siege, the issue of a discipline which may be considered to be irrelevant would be a thing of the past. Back to you, Tatenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Tatenda, are you still there? I'm wondering if we maybe lost Tatenda. It looks, Tatenda, are
No,
you there?
I'm there.
Oh.
It's just that I had lost my microphone.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Prof, for the presentation. It was lovely, and yeah. I don't know if we have any questions before I ask.
I think you can go ahead, Tatenda. You can break the ice for us.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, I would like to say thank you, Prof, for this wonderful presentation. And it was well detailed. And yeah, I actually learned a lot. So I would like to go back to your 2021 statement, or rather your words in 2021 on the UNESCO's World Heritage Center and Chair on African Heritage, where you were talking about the university's curriculum, teaching and research. For me, I think it is actually going in line with this presentation, where you are saying archaeology should not only be about us as archaeologists, or rather about the academias, but also should include the people, that is the society which is being researched, and the society around us. So in line with these words, what do you think universities have so far done to ensure that they move beyond teaching and research?
Thank you, Tatenda, for that question. What universities have done. I will start with the institution where I am at the moment, whose mandate is on the arts, culture, and heritage, which should be anchored in innovation, technology, and industrialization. What we have done at Great Zimbabwe University is we have deliberately targeted Great Zimbabwe, for example, is for our research and conservation work. And remember, Great Zimbabwe is also a strategic resource in terms of tourism. So we are involved in research with other partners. We are also involved in conserving the fabric of the monument with other partners and the legal custodian of the monument. And that way, that is how we make our contribution directly to issues of tourism development, by ensuring that there is enough interpretation and there is sound conservation in terms of the monument itself. And we are contributing very innovative approaches to restorations and very innovative approaches to research. And this also has been the trend if you look at various universities that we have in Southern Africa. If you look at the University of Cape Town, University of Pretoria, the University of the Witwatersrand, University of Botswana, and many such universities in Southern Africa where we have got archaeological departments, they are trying to make a contribution by telling the story, by interpreting the sites, by being involved in conservation work. And I think that is very, very important. But what has happened at Great Zimbabwe University, something which is interesting, where we are involved in what we have called agro-innovations. We are located in a dryland zone in southern Zimbabwe, and we are very keen on issues of livelihoods. So learning from the research we have done in southern Zimbabwe on livelihoods, we are now using that information to identify our indigenous grains and to target them for development and focusing on issues of nutrition, focusing on issues of adaptation to dryland zones. We are focusing again on value chains and value additions in terms of some of our traditional crops and animals. So in a way, as archaeologists, we provide the baseline data, and we also provide the characteristics and the properties for the indigenous grains, which then we work with our specialists in agronomy to try to develop new varieties for our indigenous crops. But in the process, we are also involved in the preservation of our indigenous grains. But it's all a matter of saying what sort of opportunities exist in different universities. But there are opportunities. Universities have played an important role, and some of the contributions from our universities have played a very important role, especially if you look at the cradle of humankind, for example, the research that has gone there and the sort of initiative that has gone there. Or if you look at Mapungubwe, the research that has gone there in terms of interpretation and conservation, or Great Zimbabwe, or many other sites that we have in the region. Over to you, Tatenda.
Okay. Thank you very much, Prof, for this wonderful answer. And I'm sure it's more detailed. Thank you very much for the deep explanation. Do we have any other questions?
I have a question from my side.
Okay.
Prof, you mentioned something early in your talk, and it kind of stuck with me. And I actually went and I did a bit of quick research on the internet, where you said that the government was thinking of scrapping certain what they term to be useless degrees. And I actually found a few websites that list 15 most useless college and university degrees, of which anthropology and archaeology is on the list, but also tourism, ethnic and civilization studies, as well as surprisingly education. Now, I do note that in your talk you mentioned that we have to collaborate with other disciplines, and naturally you'd think that the discipline of education is one of those primary disciplines that you want to collaborate with, because it's all about informing people and getting the word out there. In fact, that archaeology is not a useless discipline, because there is so much potential for archaeology to contribute towards social development, towards social cohesion, and just a general appreciation of our history and what we've gone through and where we are today. And I think a lot of these assumptions about disciplines like archaeology being worthless comes from the fact that there aren't many career opportunities for people with archaeology degrees. I mean, I myself have a postgraduate degree, and I'm not working in archaeology. I'm busy with a postdoc, but following that, what happens? And I think a lot of the value that's associated to a discipline like archaeology comes from the fact that there aren't many careers, but they're not really taking into consideration other values of the discipline, not just the potential to generate the income for one individual, but to educate communities and to teach people about the past and about their own cultural history. So my question to you is then, how do we change this perception? How do we get to the decision makers at government level? How do we get to them and convince them and say, our discipline has value, but there aren't many employment opportunities, and employment opportunities should actually come from government, because government at some level should have some kind of responsibility towards developing and protecting its own cultural heritage. But that is not being done. How do we get to these decision makers to say, we're here, we're passionate about our field, there's value in what we do?
Thank you so much for reflecting on that, and for the research that you did manage to do. I think that list is mischievous, in the sense that you realize that most of those disciplines which are cited in there, they have a contribution to make in terms of both economic, social, or even political development. So it's a matter of people looking at development in a very restricted way. And then my second comment is that when you look at the whole issue of disciplines like archaeology being looked down upon and people thinking that they have nothing to contribute, that is the complete opposite. When you look, when I was talking about the global agenda and the sustainable development goals, if you look at the Africa we want, if we look at some national development programs, you see that at a national level, archaeology and heritage has been embraced. When you go down the chain, these are considered, therefore, useless. So I think there is something somewhere where we are missing something. And this is why in my presentation, my appeal is for archaeologists to also make a meaningful contribution on matters of development. And then now going specifically to the question on what needs to be done, such that what needs to be done, I think one of the key issues is that our archaeological research, our discipline itself, it also needs to transform in terms of how we present and project our work. We need to also talk to topical and relevant issues. We have to be in the present. That's why my title was The Past in the Present. We have to deal with the current realities, and we have to be more futuristic. So we have to make a meaningful contribution of climate change. If I'm to give you that particular example, who will contribute meaningfully on issues of climate change without the contribution of archaeologists and related professionals? We have to contribute on matters of livelihoods, on issues of diet, issues of hygiene, right, that we extract from issues of paleontology. Why don't we, after studying our human remains, reflect on issues of diet and nutrition, which then influence the food systems that we have? So the point I'm emphasizing is that I think as archaeologists, what we have done is to do great scientific research, and basically we have been talking to ourselves. We have to reach out and talk also to other people. This is why I was saying we have to go beyond community engagement. It's like that what we are doing, the good things that we are doing, can also make a meaningful contribution that our discipline gains traction in terms of being a relevant discipline. Now, the issue of being a qualified archaeologist and not working in archaeology, it's a reflection of the overall performance of our economies in Southern Africa. Currently, our economies are underperforming. And if they are underperforming, therefore, there are no job opportunities, not only for archaeologists, but also for other specialists in various disciplines. This is where it is important that as different specialists, we have now also to play a role in stimulating the economies, in playing an active role. If there is enough economic development taking place within our communities, therefore, there will be need for people to do impact assessments. There will be need for people to do further implementation. There will be need for people to be involved in education. There will be need for people to come up with new innovations and new ways of doing things that we derive from the past. Archaeologists should contribute towards issues like architecture and designs. They must contribute towards issues like science and technology. So that is not happening. Our economies are depressed, and as a result, the opportunities for archaeologists and many other disciplines are not there. So that is my take in terms of why people are not getting, or the impression that we have that there are not so many opportunities for archaeology. But there are so many opportunities. It's a matter of having to redesign our curriculum in higher education, especially, and also in ensuring that we can also contribute in a meaningful way to other disciplines and ultimately to development.
Thank you, Prof, for that comprehensive feedback. We can only hope then that our economy is restored to such an extent that, like you say, if a lot of the other industries get back on their feet, like mining industries, that we can hopefully get, for example, heritage impact assessments, and to get more of our students involved into heritage management and so forth. But yes, thank you very much for that feedback, Prof.
Thank you so much, Marriott. Thank you so much, Prof, for the elaborate explanation. Maybe before I ask a question, I don't know, Marriott, how is our timeline?
We are running a bit short. We are now on an hour mark. So I think if we can keep it to one last short question, that should be fine.
Okay. So any questions before I go for a question? Okay. I will always say thank you, Prof, for this profound presentation, and it's an eye opener to us all and to all our viewers. Maybe before we go, what maybe advice would you give, Prof, maybe in relation to your presentation, and again in relation to your portfolio? You are well decorated. You know, you are not only into archaeology, but you are also using archaeology to open different avenues, and you are also involved in various, aspects of global matters. What then is your advice to all, like, other upcoming archaeologists who are only dwelling into archaeology without venturing into other aspects, which include like policy making, for example? And yeah, what's your advice to such people? Thank you.
Oh, a very difficult question. I think my advice, especially to young scholars like yourself, the council, and the big constituency that you represent, is that you do have an important role to play in uplifting the quality of life of ordinary people. Archaeology and related disciplines is a worthy undertaking, which has the potential to drive development, and which is also very important, especially for the African continent, to start believing once again. It has been done. We know the civilizations, we know the technological innovations that we see coming from Africa, from archaeology. We know the civilizations that came out of Africa. And you as young scholars, you are the sort of people with the right tools, with the right technology to communicate to the rest of the world, and also to make a meaningful contribution in transforming the discipline itself, such that it continues to grow and it continues to have relevance that cuts across the different disciplines. In short, I would say maybe you need a redefinition of archaeology to say probably it is the study of technology, which we, in many ways, we are saying that is what should drive our economies today. So you are the people who understand what drives innovation and technology and adaptation. And this is what I think our continent needs. It needs innovation, it needs technology, it needs adaptation, and it needs to make use of local resources. And it is in the youth that we can have things happening. So please don't give up. There are great opportunities, and please don't sit back, play an active role in terms of where you think archaeology can stimulate the development that we want.
Thank you very much, Prof. That was elaborate and that was clear. Mariette, do you have anything to say?
No, I think if we don't have any more questions, then we can end off. I'll hand over back to you. But before I do, just thank you very much, Prof, for joining us today and for this insightful presentation. I hope that there will be some discussion, in the comments section on our social media. If you follow us on Facebook, for example, you can always join in on the conversation. It's always good to have our presentation, our presenters come in and join the conversation with our students. But without further delay, Tatenda, thank you. Can you close the session for us, please?
Okay. Thank you very much for attending this lecture series. We are very grateful. And we look forward to have another lecture with you very soon. And we look also forward to continue and spread this whole message that archaeology matters in this current society that we are living in, that archaeology has got a lot to offer, also a lot of problems to solve. And with this, thank you, Prof. I don't know if you have any final words before we close. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Tatenda. My final words to just thank you and the council and for the great work that you're doing with your peers. And just to encourage you that you need to keep on with this kind of conversations. We are going through difficult times, and it is important to keep the fire burning, especially for archaeology and heritage. So just to thank you and to tell you that it was really a great honor to grace this platform. And I wish you all the best in your endeavors, and that you realize the worth that archaeology is.
Thank you so much, Prof. I think we can close now. Thank you very much, everyone. Mariette, Sebastian, and Tia, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thank you.
Have a great day further. Bye.
Thank you.